Hello everyone, it's me, Tsproart, or Tyler, whatever you want to call me, the writer, narrator, and artist for Journeys Ahead. Before this final chapter starts, I just want to jump in and give a quick thank you. Although the views haven't been massive, it's been cool to see the interest and love that has been shown for this story of mine. Sincerely, I do want to be an author and illustrator one day, so to see the reception to these first drafts being full of love has honestly truly motivated me towards my goals. I'm not sure when or honestly how I'll turn this into a graphic novel, but believe me, I will. Thanks again to all those who stuck through the story. I already got drafts being written for the second one, Song of Serpents, and that's pretty much it. So, I won't take up too much more of your time. I hope you enjoy the finale, because this is a passion project of mine. This is Journeys Ahead, Chapter 9, the finale, the cycle. Holding hands in a warm embrace, Void and Jida crossed through the barrier of static red with a set of slow steps. They weren't burned as opposed to the other glitch portals. No, whatever was on the other side wanted them to cross through. As they both neared the other barrier half, their basic drawn outlines reformed into their normal bodies with small sets of pixels that slid across their builds. Together, they took a long and firm breath and crossed through to the other side. Stepping upon stone, Void and Jida were met with an unusual sight to behold. The sky, or lack thereof, looked to be going around in a spiraling formation. The aurora above consisted with a mixture of red and blue outer space-like atmospheres. Orange stars trickled and popped above, while orbs of energy shot around like missiles. There were also detached and shattered mirror stones drifting above, all looking to be pulled or torn from the mirror space itself. Their builds no longer filled with life, rather just an endless abyss of static, the worlds that had been lost, Void assumed. The ground was also strange. What was thought to be stone was actually just jet black glass. Obsidian, maybe? Neither could tell. What they could, however, were the swirling forms of constellations within. It looked almost like a window into the omniversal pattern itself, all just right below their feet. Blue? Jida quietly mumbled, tugging upon his hand. Craning his gaze back up, the spark looked at Jida and asked a quick, "Yeah?" Slowly raising a finger, Jida pointed it towards something in the distance. Following her gaze, the spark locked his eyes upon exactly what she was referring to. Within the center of the massive obsidian platform were several sharp extensions of the ground that looked to extend upwards, creating an odd shape in a way. It was almost a small hill of glassy stone per se, or rather, a throne. And sitting upon this throne was a figure. Surrounded by flaking stardust and glitch particles, sat a tall, almost broken-looking shape in a squatting position. The figure didn't look natural. Its form appeared to be shattered, or rather, cracked. It almost looked as though it were a bunch of mirror shards mashed together to create the form of a rough humanoid shape. Wherever a normal joint would have been, knees, elbows, a waist, a neck even, they were replaced with an empty chasm that had the visible form of static within its interior. The being clearly had bones. The splits in their outline could be seen inside the void of static, but nothing connected, nothing at all. All the limbs merely floated and acted as though the joints had been there. The being's hands were large and sharp, 6 stake-like claws and 2 knife-sized thumbs. These bladed fingers looked to have been tapping upon its squatted legs, that both ended in sharp icicle-type points. Although looking to be forged from mirrors, the glossy exterior of its body consisted with either red or pure black glinting glass. It was a threatening mixture of color that reflected off the glowing space around, easily making Void and Jida nervous in their steps. But the most notable feature of all was its head. It was a cube, turned to a point where the corner faced the duo. It was simply just a blood-red glowing cube with one singular purple and orange glowing eye that levitated in front of it, off the head and body. The eye was shaped akin to the mirror they had walked through. a sideways diamond with a tiny burning iris that locked onto the two multiversal beings. Together, both Void and Jida nodded towards one another and began approaching the unusual force. Then, from its eye, came the voice of the thing that had been responsible for everything, the voice of the Source.
After all the years of trial and error, countless nights of crying and self-destruction, the Spark finally makes his grand entrance, bringing not just himself, but his little pet as well.
The being boasted with a cocky voice as it watched the two of them approach his throne. Letting go of each other, Void stood front and center while Jida stood a foot back, their fists clenched and brows furrowed as they gazed upon the strange, crystallized glitch. After all these years, Void had imagined something more grotesque or large and muscular even, but an almost scrawny and lanky mirror monster was the last thing he had expected to see. But if there was one thing he knew, it was to never judge a book by its cover. "Who are you?" the Spark asked as his eyes began to fizzle with a blue flame. Tilting its cube-shaped head with an audible crack, the glitch's eyes sparked and danced with a bright purple hue while shifting its gaze between Void and Jida. It was sickly and eerie the way it moved, spazzing between one side and the other while its head slowly spun from left to right. Void wanted to know. He needed to.
I am what you have been searching for, Nova-san. I can go by many names. The Glitched, the Source. But preferably, you can call me Lotus.
The glitch revealed, now tilting its head to the other side. "Lotus? You're kidding, right?" Jida asked, placing her hands upon both hips. "You could literally call yourself anything, like the God of Death, the Destroyer of Worlds. But you go with a flower? Boring!" The musician retorted, making a yawning gesture.
Do you know the meaning of the word lotus, child?
The glitch asked in its calm tone, while now slowly leaning forward. Both Void and Jida looked at one another to this, before the musician gave an unimpressed shrug.
The term varies from world to world, but in most regions, it signifies one thing and one thing alone.
The glitch began, whilst tilting its head once more.
Rebirth.
With a sharp and snapping flick in its wrist, the glitch sealed the portal behind the two of them close. An echoed, electrical sound erupted from the skies and ground, leading to both Void and Jida to jump from surprise. Enough! If you're just gonna ramble on about meanings and literary significance, then how about you answer something I've been wanting to ask for a long time? Marching forward with burning blue eyes, Void put his foot down and clenched his fists, proceeding to ask in a demanding voice. Why? Why are you killing innocent worlds? What's the goal? Void asked. No, he demanded, as him and Lotus locked eyes with burning fury.
Why am I doing this? The answer is rather simple. Look around you, children.
Lotus remarked with a raise in his right clawed hand. From all around, mirrors began to emerge and float around the three of them in an almost dome-like shape. From within, Void and Jida were able to see countless different worlds and realities. Some of the Spark and musician herself, while many others showed different lands, people, and environments. Adventures, wars, holidays, everything you could have ever dreamed of from a distant land was on full display for all of them to see.
What you see as innocent worlds, I see a mess, an endless sea of meaningless stories and narratives that are all the same and never seem to end.
Lotus revealed with a gentle raise in his blocky head.
We glitches. We are the scraps of these stories. We are the plot holes, the mistypes, the errors that are discarded and left on the cutting room floor. We glitches. We all see the truth of what everything truly is.
Looming back down, Lotus glared at the two heroes, seeing their minds click and think to his words. and almost made the glitch chuckle.
What you believe to be other worlds and lives are truthfully just the mere words on the pages of a clustered sea of books, novels, and figments of someone's imagination. Some stories the same, some different, but all undeniably overpopulated and repetitive.
Resting his back upon the throne of glass, Lotus clutched his fist and began to tap his spiked foot, all the while shaking his head.
The two of you can't even be counted as specks in everything, not even close to molecules within the grand scale of what you are trying to protect.
Looking to one another with concerned eyes, the two returned their focus towards the monster, unsure of what to make of his reasoning.
What I seek is to make a new tomorrow, a single universe where there's no such thing as the Omniverse.
Lotus revealed, now slowly beginning to stand upon his feet.
Once I wipe these worlds clean, my people, the glitched as you've come to call us, will form into something that matters.
Taking a step back, both Void and Jida watched as Lotus raised his hands to create a flight of glass-like stairs to the ground. As he descended with shining clacks, he continued.
My people will take shape into one consistent universe, one without flaw, one where we won't be chained by the hands that craft us. Don't you get it, Spark? We are just mere words and thoughts of some sort of higher power above. All of us, no matter how different, come from beings that even I can't fathom to imagine.
Reaching the bottom floor, Lotus stood a defiant 11 feet off the ground. His glass-like body had begun to spark and ripple with energy while eyeing Void and Jida. His interior then began to glow with red and deep purples as sparks of glitches and constellations formed within himself. Deploying their respective weapons, Void brought forth his Nova Blades, and Jida with her fiery daggers, now visibly nervous.
Once everything is gone, when my people create anew, I will find a way to our beyond and set the record straight with whatever or whoever made us. Once finished, I shall bring forth a new age of peace, a rebirth to all, no matter the cost.
Scowling with a shake in his head, Void stood up before Lotus and stated his mind. You speak the words of insanity. No. We will not allow you to destroy another universe. This ends today. Lifting his arms at his sides, Lotus gave a furrowed expression with his eye, before retorting at the two of them in a sour voice.
Couldn't agree more.
The glitch remarked as the 2v3 locked eyes. It felt as though the world held still. With a raise in his arms, Lotus clenched his fist with a sharp shockwave of blood-red energy. Mere seconds after, the obsidian-like flooring began to shatter into several large sectors. These massive platform-like chunks all rose in an upwards manner, levitating higher and higher, making Void's stomach drop. After mere seconds, the speed at which they rose went up at an alarming rate. The Spark and Musician both stumbled from this change, but quickly found their footing as they went up and up. Come on, Freckles! Let's end this! Void shouted towards his ally with determined eyes. Let's do it! Jida replied before they both launched themselves forward and towards Lotus. Sprinting hard on their feet, Void rushed the glitch, while Jida warped in an aerial strike. As her sneakered foot came down, Lotus shifted himself out of the way in a unique manner. His body shattered itself apart and quickly reformed within the blink of an eye. Yelping in sudden shock, Jida crashed to the cold crystal ground while Void leapt forward with a harsh slash. Turning around, Lotus contorted his right arm into a ruby-colored crystal blade, proceeding to clash and counterlock the Spark. The glitch's singular eye beamed with sudden enjoyment as the two began to clash against one another in violent strikes, creating an amazing scene for the musician. Strafing from left to right, Void slashed, flipped, and unleashed a fury of blows upon Lotus, who deflected each one without flaw.
Don't waste your energy yet, Spark. We've only just begun.
Lotus chimed with a sinister breath before grabbing Void by the throat in a quick action.
I could kill you with ease, but I want to savor this. After all, those were my children you went around slaying.
the glitch remarked before whirling itself around and slamming Void upon the ground. The Spark gasped and spiraled a few feet back before rolling to a stop upon his knees. Void didn't know what to say. He had no witty remarks, no comebacks. All that mattered to him was putting an end to the chaos for good. Lifting his head up, the Spark scowled before deploying his battle mask. As it sealed with a sharp clank, the Spark's angered eyes appeared from its darkened shadows, shimmering a bright red. As Lotus prepared to strike again, Jida leapt herself back into the fight with a burning punch. With it, she struck the glitch in its cube skull, causing a shockwave to erupt from the site. Stumbling, Lotus caught himself from falling over, while Jida landed back to the ground and blasted a wave of fire upon his form.
Foolish.
He barked as the flames did little to no effect on his glassy exoskeleton. Raising his clawed hand back, Lotus prepared to strike before Void rushed in with bullets of fury. The blaster strikes slightly cracked the glitch's exoskeleton, but not by much. As Lotus gazed back upon the Spark, he was met by his blue form tackling him. The two of them, now mid-air, flew and went over the ledge, landing hard upon another platform. Void! Jida shouted as another split divided the both of them apart within the rising sky. With a hard slam, Void gripped Lotus by his head and smashed it against the ground, proceeding to then punch his static eye in with pure rage. Void's blue hues slowly began to burn red as he could only think about all the loss, the loneliness, how his life had been ruined by this one thing that was now below his feet.
Such fire in your heart. You would have made for a great companion if you hadn't been so set in your ways.
Lotus retorted as he deconstructed himself and reformed behind Void.
You are still a child,
the glitch said before grabbing the Spark by the back of his skull and slamming his face into the ground. The impact came hard, so hard that it managed to crack the tough glass of the mask. Before Void could react, his body was lifted back up, spun around, and flung hard into a nearby set of rising stone. As the Spark's body made contact, the black crystal platform shattered, leaving Void barreling through it and crashing atop another set of rock. Warping down the Lotus, Jida slashed upon his body with her fiery daggers, but was met with the glitch's deflecting blade. "Pick on someone your own size, bub!" she shouted as they engaged each other with quick and violent strikes. Clashes of red and orange stardust erupted from afar, while Void slowly got up and tried to regain his strength. As he did so, blood seeped from his mouth and spilled its way out from the lower half of the mask. It didn't splat upon the ground, however, for the air had been moving at such a velocity that its blue form carried itself away in the wind. "Freckles!" he groaned, slowly beginning to self-heal. With maneuvering flips and spins, Jida leapt and dodged from oncoming blows and slashes that would have turned her body cold. Lotus didn't sweat, blink, or falter. He was like a machine, a soulless, calculated machine that seemed to predict every move that came.
I have no quarrel with you, lapdog.
Lotus barked as he swung both his fists down, trying to crush the musician with violent force. Leaping away from the attack, Jida landed back to her feet with an offended look upon her face. "Excuse me?" she snapped, whilst warping away from another strike. "Listen, I may be a lot of things, but a lapdog? Nah." Spinning around with his multiple limbs, Lotus went to strike again, but Jida quickly leapt upon his body and used the same maneuvers she used to the crooks back in Aurora. With a hard warp, she dragged Lotus through her subspace field and launched themselves back out into the main obsidian platform. However, as they crossed through, the glitch managed to grip the musician by the face in a harsh grasp. With a shocked expression, Jida tried to fight off the cold hand, but was soon about to meet the same attack as dealt to Void. However, before she was slammed upon the stone, the Spark's mask summoned and clasped itself around her face, right before she was practically pancaked upon the crystal ground. As the mask deflected with another crack, Jida recoiled across the floor and rolled out of sight. Coming in hot, Void blasted himself back in from behind and slashed his axe across Lotus's spine. A spray of red and black static spewed from the wound like a broken outlet, leading to Lotus bellowing a haunting scream. As the glitch turned the fight, Void yelled in rage and began to swing from his lefts and rights, making deep gashes within Lotus's shattering build.
Enough!
The glitch boasted, catching the Spark's axe mid-strike. Raising and flinging Void off his weapon, The spark stumbled back and watched in dismay as Lotus, with one hand, snapped his primary weapon in two.
Foolish tech serves no death upon me, child.
The glitch retorted in a gasping voice as his wounds began to mend and heal. Leaping back in, Jida went to stab the monster. All the while, Void's mask remained tight upon her face, now glinting with yellow eyes. However, before she could strike, Lotus caught her by the neck without even having to turn around. Void's eyes widened at this as he attempted the charge, but the glitch had other plans.
One more move and I snap her neck.
Lotus snapped as he eyed Void down with burning rage. With worry, the spark looked from Jida's struggling body and then to the glitch, thinking on what he could do in that moment. Then it clicked. Don't need to, he stated before releasing a hot pulse of red energy from his horns, causing Lotus to falter and drop Jida to the ground. Seeing his chance, Void quickly rushed Lotus once more, plunging his two Nova Blades deep into his chest. Howling in pain, Lotus attempted to fight off the spark, but he, however, continued to twist and plunge the now burning red weapons into the soul of the glitch.
Still as brash as you were then, Nova Son. When will you learn?
Lotus cried before raising his hands and clenching Void by the head.
This fight is all for nothing.
With a sharp pull and slam, Lotus tore Void away from his chest and smashed the spark down upon the crystallized floor, shattering it and sending both him and Lotus into the dark abyss. Void! Jida cried as he and Lotus found themselves plummeting into a deep cavern within the stone. Seeing this, the musician quickly brushed off the pain in her side and leapt in after the two of them. As Void and the glitch fell, he soon felt the grasp of Lotus letting go, leaving the spark to spiral for what felt like an extended period of time. Soon, the sight of orange and gray clouds flooded his vision in a sudden drive, all before the spark crashed down upon an ashy, stone-ridden floor. Groaning, Void slowly opened his eyes, finding himself to be face first in the dirt. Reaching down, he pressed both his hands into the ground and pushed himself up with an audible metallic crack. That's when he realized something that caused his skin to crawl. Gazing up, the spark could see fire and ash blowing from all around, broken buildings along with distant screaming and blaster fire. This wasn't the interior of some rock. No, he was back in Salvaheim. He was back during the Purge. Quickly standing to his feet with panic in his heart, Void whirled himself around, beginning to hyperventilate and shake, seeing all the carnage once again. What is this? He said before closing his mouth in shock. Looking down at himself, the spark found that he was now 10 years younger. He was back to wearing his greens and baggy pants, alongside having that squeaky, annoying voice. Beginning to pat himself down, Void felt as though he were about to have another anxiety attack, until it all ceased into a sharp, cold sting caused with a voice from behind. Void? Eyes widening, the spark slowly turned himself back around to face the sound. No, he said through a cold breath before facing a wall of orange and gray fog. From its form, slowly approached a lumbering shadow. Its footfalls came as sharp and echoing, all until the figure revealed itself within an orange flash of light. It was Nova. Father? Void questioned with a shocked gaze, watching as the man that practically raised him summoned his signature golden spear, all the while showing a flare of anger in his eyes. Dad? Void asked again, taking a step back. I'm very disappointed in you, my son, Nova stated as his eyes burned with a yellow energy. What? Void stuttered back, nearly falling upon his rear. You failed your training, Nova barked as he swung his spear in a downward slash. Thinking fast, Void activated his Nova Blades and deflected the blow to a failing measure. As the spear struck down, it clashed and shattered the blades. Void had been reduced back to his younger mindset, a time where he couldn't muster his energy the same way he could do as an adult. Falling back, the spark landed hard while his father, whatever he was, slowly approached again. You're not real. You can't be real! Void cried as Nova rose and slashed his spear down in a hard clash. Rolling to the left, Void evaded the attack, proceeding to then roll to his right, evading again. With a backward somersault, The little spark got back to his feet and attempted to run, but was only met with a hard kick of Nova's boot. "You failed us," he stated as Void crashed back to the ground. Breathing in sharply through his teeth, the spark began to scoot backwards in fear of the older spark. Tears swelled in his eyes as his father continued on. "If you had finished your training, me and your mother would still be alive," he cried as Void tried to stand. "I thought you to be better." Swinging again, Nova drove his spearhead down, nearly striking the spark in a killing blow. Raising his leg, Void kicked at his dad, all the while with tears streaming down his face. No, you're not him. You can't be," Void weakly cried with a squeaky voice. "You didn't deserve to escape," Nova barked as he reached down and gripped Void by his neck. Raising him high, Nova began to squeeze around the little spark's windpipes, leaving him to gasp and grasp towards his supposed father. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Void wept as the color began to fade from his body. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry." He wept again as his vision began to blur. Nova showed no remorse for his child. The strength in his hand was unmatched for the little Void. All he could do was seemingly accept his fate. "Blue!" The words of Jida suddenly rang out as a sharp blast of fire soared in and struck Nova sharply in the face. The world around suddenly began to spasm and glitch like a broken VHS tape trying to play a film after the impact came. Falling back to the ground, Void opened his eyes to see that he was back to his present self, all grown up with his signature blues and grays, and of course, no squeaky voice. "Void!" Jida's words came again as she rushed in from behind. Turning, Void's eyes widened before he practically leapt into her arms. The two of them embraced in a tender hug while spinning around before looking into each other's eyes with relief. "Freckles," the spark softly said back, wiping away his tears. "Void, are you okay? Lotus had you by the damn throat," Jida revealed as she turned to face what Void had assumed to be a ghost or some form of his father. "Lotus?" the spark questioned before laying his eyes upon the glitch, now upon his hands and knees. Lotus had created an illusion, taking the form of Void's misery and regrets, a truly despicable act that he noted. Within a flash, the static around shifted and forged itself into a new environment. A cityscape quickly appeared, surrounding both Void and Jida within a street. The city then instantly erupted into a bright yellow flame, while the sky began to drop with hundreds of asteroids. Screaming and crashing vehicles erupted from all angles as Lotus slowly stood back upon his dagger-like feet, igniting himself into flames. Jida's expression then dropped into one of shock once the scene finished changing. Turning, Void watched as she slowly put a hand over her mouth. Her body then began to shake and legs began to tremble. She didn't need to say it. Void knew what this was. From the story she told him, he knew this to be the Night of 1,000 Flames.
Foolish children. So determined, so caught up in your goals, yet you fail to see that you are fighting for nothing in return.
The Burning Lotus said as he began to slowly walk his way towards the two heroes. The glitch's body then began to spark, switching between his regular form, to Nova, to Celeste, and even to members of Jida's family, all on fire.
There is no salvation if you destroy its glitched. There is no peace, no greater purpose. You will only find shallow waters in your search for the Grand Sea.
Lotus barked as Void wrapped his hands around Jida's, trying to comfort her and tell her that everything besides Lotus wasn't real.
You claim to be strong, yet weep at the sight of your own stories, the traumas forced upon you through the ones above. If you let us finish what we started, there will be no more tragedy. At the cost of annihilation, me and my people will forge a new universe of peace. No more pointless tragedies, no more mess, no plot holes, all one story, one simple narrative.
Lotus explained as he brought out his blades.
Know in death that your tragedies shan't happen to others. Shouldn't that peace of mind be enough to submit?
Looking up at the same time with rage in their hearts, both Void and Jida gave each other a look that didn't need words. Gazing back at the approaching glitch, the two raised their hands forward and unleashed a combined attack. Void with a massive blast, and Jida with a harsh ignition and flames. As the two streams of energy combined, it created a burning purple flame that struck Lotus straight in the chest. The combined attack had been so powerful, it sent the monster launching back and crashing out into the open once more. "Chida, warp!" Void shouted as the two of them now ran towards the shattered opening. Hand in hand, Chida leapt forward with a yell, teleporting both her and Void up and back out into the blue and red light. There on the ground, quickly getting back to his feet, Lotus looked a scowl upon the two star-crossed heroes, who now approached in both fast and hard steps.
Of course. Like any child, they refused to listen.
Lotus remarked before suddenly firing out a reddish-blue laser from his eye. Both stepping aside, Void and Chida rolled and slid out of the way as the surge of energy came in a lightning-fast drove. Getting back to their feet, the two began to open fire upon Lotus, Void with his cannons, and Chida with strong star matter from her knuckles. Ceasing the laser stream, Lotus rose both his arms back and slammed them hard into the ground. An erupting wave of glass shot its way towards the duo in a rapid succession that made both of them stop in their tracks. Leaping to his side, Void quickly embraced Chida behind himself and deflected the blast with a bright blue Nova rune. From the shockwave dealt, the large form of obsidian began to quickly tilt at a backwards angle, making the three of them realize that they were about to go over and fall if something wasn't done. As the massive stone began to rock its way backwards, Void, Chida, and even Lotus began to slip and fall. The glitch, using its claws, caught itself before plummeting. Void, however, managed to reach up with an extending arm and lashed his fingers around the spiked leg of the glitch. Reaching with his other hand, the spark caught Chida by her foot before she fell to the world below. Now in a dangling state, she rose her fist up and began to open fire upon Lotus. The Glitch King began to grunt in pain from the attack as he tried to kick Void off his legs. "Blue! Throw me at him!" Chida shouted from behind the spark's mask as Void's grip began to loosen. Nodding, the spark swayed Chida to the side and then threw her up with all his strength. Within the air, Chida quickly warped to a higher point, going above Lotus in a burning hue. Clasping her feet together, Chida threw her hands back and launched herself downwards in an energized blow. This attack she learned from Void, using his blasters as a boost. With this, she did the same with her energy, in turn, crashing into the glitch with such force, it turned the rock back upright. As Chida and Lotus crashed and went sprawling back to normal ground, Void found himself being flung high into the air from the impact. Now above the two of them in a mighty sight, the spark extended both of his arms down and lashed upon the dazed Lotus. Then, like a tape measure retracting its coil, Void brought himself down hard upon Lotus, shattering his chest in a violent, crushing crash. Now atop him, Void summoned Nova runes to his fists, recalling the lessons his father had taught him many years ago. And so began the beatdown. The glitch's face began to crack in shattering blasts. With each fist that Void brought down upon Lotus's face, the more his cube shape began to split and shatter. Groaning and yelling in rage, Lotus quickly returned the attack by gripping Void by the throat and slamming him into the ground. From behind, Chida attempted to leap in and help her friend, but Lotus caught her yet again, now having the two of them in chokeholds.
I must admit, Nova Sentinel, you truly have shown yourself to be quite the adversary. But I'm afraid this little collision of ours has gone on for quite enough.
Lotus explained as he began to slowly dig his nails in the Void's neck.
I bid you two farewell. A shame no one will remember you in the final days.
With a flash of rage, Void's horn sparked with that red energy once more, allowing for him to release a pulse of burning hot Nova energy. This in turn caused Lotus to falter, just enough to slightly release the spark. Raising his mechanical mitts, Void suddenly grasped Lotus by his cubed skull and delivered a powerful glass-shattering headbutt. Lotus's eye seemed to crack and bleed upon the impact, leading to the glitch to drop Chida and attempt to reach and mend his wound. It was then Void realized that his energy, his spark-like abilities, it was the key to defeating Lotus. Like he said, mere tech wouldn't do the job. Getting the upper hand, Void rolled over the glitch and drug him by the throat. Standing back up and yelling in fury, the spark, using all of his strength, threw the large glitch across the ground, propelling him off with a blast at his Nova runes.
No!
Lotus cried as he tried to stand back to his feet. As he got up upon one knee, the glitch was instantly met with the sight of a burning blue fist, striking his eye once more. Coming in from the other side, Chida delivered a powerful kick, shattering Lotus's right arm, while Void came back around with another mighty strike with his hand. The Spark didn't need his blades anymore. All he needed was himself, along with Jaida's helping hand. Together, the two of them practically double-jumped the monster, striking with one blow after the other, until at last, Void, with a sharp uppercut, hit Lotus so hard that he fell off the side of the ledge. Without hesitation, both Void and Jaida leapt from the rock as well, falling down after Lotus. The Spark's fear of heights was now vanished with victory in sight. Within the air, the two multiversal heroes fired off combined rounds of energy. Swirling blues and dancing oranges crashed into the glitch mid-air, breaking away chunks of glass and severing nerve endings within his build. As the ground slowly made its presence known, both Void and Jaida nodded towards one another before gripping each other's hands. Together, with their free hands, they summoned another combined force of spark energy and cosmic fire. A swirl of burning purple ignited to life as a final attack that Lotus couldn't help but shudder towards. "Release on 3! Void cried. 1, 3! Jaida interrupted with a shout, as both she and Void unleashed a mighty force of energy upon the glitch. With a powerful blow, Lotus was struck and burned with a mighty force. The impact was so strong that it sent the glitch down to the ground faster than anticipated. As the impact of purple light erupted, Void got behind Jaida and deployed his wings, slowing their fall and allowing for a safe landing all the way back down to the ground below. As Lotus and the impacting blast struck the ground, a massive eruption of ash and dust flew up into the air, completely clouding Void's vision, but leaving Jaida able to see through the smoke. The Spark's mask around her face allowed her the view through all manner of dust and debris, and there below, shimmering with hot blues and oranges, was the glowing, thermalized sight of Lotus, still alive. Void, he's still kicking. Jaida grumbled as she took off the Spark's mask and placed it back over his face. I see. He replied, taking a long look. Gently descending down, Void let go of Jaida with a small drop before he himself landed, retracting both his wings and mask. Now back upon the shattered and destroyed obsidian ground, both Void and Jaida slowly began to make their way towards Lotus. Walking in front with his right arm cannon readied, Void couldn't help but shake in his steps. After all these years, was it about to be over? From the side, Jaida gripped upon the Spark's right hand in a warm embrace, the two now walking in sync before coming across him. Laying on his side, Lotus looked more or less like a shell of the powerful being he once was. Both his legs had been shattered and melted away, while all that remained for limbs was his left arm. Stopping a few feet from the monster, the two of them looked on with disgust as the glitch rose his blocky head towards them in a crooked manner. Lotus's shattered eye buzzed and sparked, akin to a broken TV screen. It evaluated and watched his two attackers. Then, like a madman, Lotus began to laugh. Wincing with disgust, Void began marching forward with Jaida close behind, her grip all getting tighter with worry. "What?" Void asked in a dry voice as Lotus cackled on.
Look at you two, triumphant and tall. How underwhelming.
The glitch replied as it shifted itself to be front-facing at the two of them.
You know, there is something just so funny about it all. Me thinking I could change the unchangeable, believing to find a way out of this loophole, this cycle of never-ending plots, and yet you both believe in my defeat. It will bring a sense of peace. You're both so gullible.
Lotus rambled on as his eye flickered with life and presumably death. This beyond, these higher beings you speak of. You talk insanity. All of this is insanity. Void retorted, stepping closer.
Insanity? Insanity! Look around you. Your species claims to be multiversal, yet out there are countless versions of you, all different and changing. You have seen it. I've been watching you this whole time, and I know you've seen it. And yet, you believe it to be a simple shoulder shrug to a system that makes sense. You're blind to your own ideology. You truly think any of this, all of this now, is out of free will?
Lotus continued as he slowly scraped himself at the two of them, dragging a glitchy blood trail behind himself.
Everything will repeat again and again, somewhere, anywhere, always. This mess will concur over and over like the dumpster fire that it is. You truly think ending me and my people will save your precious worlds?
Lotus asked as all three of them locked eyes.
Novason, it doesn't matter if you destroy us. Once our power is gone, another force out there, possibly stronger, will simply just slot itself into the empty shelf we would leave behind. A force that may not have the same morals as I.
Wincing, Jida looked down the Void's hand, noticing that it was starting to grip tightly around hers. All the while, Lotus continued to speak.
I destroyed to try and save this mess. You destroyed to try and save this mess as well. The only difference is that one of us had the ability to actually fix it all for good.
Lotus hissed as he and Void were now less than a foot apart.
You want to know something even funnier, Spark? Because of you, for what you did here, you are now the catalyst for so many other tragedies that happen upon an endless sea of worlds.
Lotus revealed as his eye widened with glee and yet anger.
You think you saved people today? No, you did not. Because of you, more chaos shall spread. More stories of agony will come forth from the beyond because of you. Another child, another poor innocent soul will suffer the same way you have suffered.
Lotus said, causing Void's face to scrunch with disgust to his words. Tears swelled in his eyes as Lotus' monologue cut deep into his heart. Jida, taking notice, tried to calm the spark down, but all Void could do was hear the words.
As we speak now, some kid out there just lost their family to an unfathomable threat the same way you had with us. And that child may not have the guts like you to survive. It's a cycle, Void. A cycle that you just allowed to carry on!
Without a second thought, without a second word, Void suddenly rose his arm and shot Lotus straight through his eye. Neither Lotus or Jida had the time to react to the attack. For seconds after, a bright light erupted from Lotus's shattered head that exploded into a beacon going high into the sky. The glitch's body then began to flake and crack apart as he instantly began to dissolve and seemingly melt away from the killing blow. Stepping back, both Void and Jida watched as the rest of Lotus's body practically caved apart and locked in upon itself. Static and burning hues danced all around until his glowing and burning form shrunk and cramped itself into the size of a baseball, all ending with Lotus's lifeless form transforming into an inanimate object, a tiny red cube. With shocked eyes, Jida whirled her head to Void, who still held his arm cannon raised with rivers of tears streaming down his face. Slowly lowering the weapon and retorting it back into his hand, the spark took in a short, tense breath as he eyed the small, harmless cube, the presumed remains of Lotus. Void? Jida asked, raising her hand to his cheek. Void, hey, look at me, Jida asked as the spark slowly turned his head, his veins flashing a satin purple hue whilst trying to process the glitch's words. He's lying. He's lying. He can't possibly. That can't be true. It can't be true. Leaning her forehead upon Void's, Jida began to warm herself up, doing everything she could to try and comfort her friend. No, that can't be possible. He was just trying to get in your head. Jida reassured, using her thumbs to wipe away the spark's tear-filled face. You stopped his madness. You stopped him. You did it. Jida reassured as Void slowly pressed his forehead into Jida's, proceeding to rub it back and forth. It was an old Spark tradition of showing comfort and passion. It's all Void could do without cracking in his words. Unsure of this, Jida returned the gesture as obsidians slowly began to crash down from afar. Opening their eyes, the Spark and Cosmic Soul stared deep into each other in a heartfelt gaze. Slowly, the worry faded as the two found solace within each other's presence. It was then Void spoke, burying his sobs back into his heart. No, we did it, he said, continuing to rub his forehead upon Jida's. Without you, none of this would have been possible. The Spark finished before looking back to the small cube. Kneeling down, Void took the item within his mitts and brushed it off. It was cold to the touch, but undeniably non-lethal. After all these years, Void had never thought his journey to end with a cube and ally by his side. But that was life, he supposed. We did it. It was then a loud and powerful rupture came from afar. Looking up, both Void and Jida watched as the world around themselves, the glitch realm, began to shatter and dissolve apart. With Lotus gone, there could be no realm to house the monsters, no place where they could function. It was like a kingdom going down. Scrap, we gotta go! Void shouted as he pocketed the cube and turned, grabbing Jida by the hand. Moving fast, they began to run as the world looked to shatter like glass. Right behind their feet, the flooring caved away, dropping to a static abyss below. Working fast, Void opened his portal opener and shot a charge in front of himself. At the last moment, before everything caved, Void and Jida leapt through the star-shaped ring, entering back into the desolate lands of Salvaheim. Landing back out into the graveyard of a world, Void and Jida landed hard upon their feet and slid across the ash. As they escaped the threshold, a shattering gust of glass and fire exploded from the star portal. Only a few flames and specks of it all reached the other side, only seconds before it sealed itself shut. Breathing hard, the two multiversal travelers looked to one another and sighed in a slow relief. Nice thinking, Jida said, patting the Spark's shoulder whilst trying to catch her breath. Slowly nodding, Void looked to the cold ground before craning his head back up, only to hear a new sound that had begun to emerge. Gazing their heads to the side, Void and Jida watched on and with awe as the glitches within Salvaheim all started to flicker and buzz. Some screamed in agony, and others started to either fade or kneel over. It was as though, with Lotus's demise, most of the smaller glitches perished, while the larger ones weakly fell before death, or lumbered away from view. It's like they were severely injured, like a sick folk, some living, while some meeting fate. None of them attacked. None of them made a move towards the Spark and Musician. They all appeared locked in their own world of mind, a deepening defeat that crushed their souls in a more literary sense. Wow, would you look at that? Jida whispered as she watched the army of glitches both retreat and perish from sight. The static-filled sky above then slowly began to fade away, opening Salvaheim back up into a dim, starry sunset. The orangish-pink light soon cast itself over the land, bringing forth a sudden sense of warmth in the cold world. Wincing, Void shielded his eyes for a moment, before letting the familiar sun from ages past caress his light blue skin once more. Slowly, the Spark walked forward, taking in a long and deep breath. Reaching to his pocket, he gently rummaged through its confines before pulling out the red cube into the light. Its ruby, crystallized form glinted itself off the sunlight from afar, making Void think to himself, questioning, was it all worth it? Void, we did it. It's over, Jida said once more while placing a hand upon his shoulder. We did it. Looking to his companion, Void tried to muster a smile, but Lotus's words crammed themselves deep within his mind. The haunting imagery of another child, somewhere out there meeting the same horrors as Void once did, made him want to puke. Lotus, the glitches, their morals and ideas were wrong. The Spark knew they did the right thing in stopping them. But even if the day was saved, per se, Void's heart only felt sorrow. You know, after all these years, I had imagined this ending in triumph. But now that I'm here, I don't know what to feel. Void explained to Jida, trying not to choke up while slowly taking a few steps forward. Void, Jida replied with a saddened tone in her voice. I'm serious. What Lotus said, what if he's right? Not the whole genocide thing, but about something taking their slot. Void questioned as he eyed the sunset. What if we just opened an empty throne? What if something worse happens? What about all those out there that can't defend themselves? Void continued as he attempted to crush the cube within his hands. What if we aren't just mere words on some higher force's paper? If so, was all this even worth it? Void asked in a depressing manner as his legs began to buckle. Was any of this even worth it? Coming from around the side, Jida reached down and took Void by the hands before looking him square in the eyes. Void, look at me, the musician asked, getting the Spark's attention. Because of you, you saved an impossible number of lives. Think about that, Blue. There's gonna be generations because of you. Isn't that worth enough? Jida explained with a teary-eyed smile. What Lotus said, it doesn't matter. Whatever may be out there, whatever gods, monsters, threats, it won't deter us from who we are. Jida said, placing her hand upon Void's chest. You taught me to follow my heart and to listen to my soul. And what it's telling me now is that we aren't chained by the what-ifs of the world. We have the power to forge our own stories. Void, with widened eyes, kept them locked with Jida, feeling a tender warmth coming from her words. The sunset now cast itself in between the two of them, seeming to signify that she was right. Reaching his arms up, Void wrapped them around Jida and pulled her into a tight, loving embrace. Without hesitation, the musician hugged back, and together they rocked in each other's arms, all the while feeling a sense of peace. Thank you, Jida. Thank you. The Spark thanked with a tender voice as he pulled back, metal hands now upon her shoulders with a wholesome expression. Thank you for breaking my shell, the Spark said as tears streamed down his face. With a replying grin, Jida nodded her head down in an almost bow-like form before replying in a soft tone. And thank you for making me realize that I matter. Still smiling, Void turned to look at the sunset once more before speaking again. Alright, let's get out of here before one of those suckers try and make a move on us, Void said as he activated a portal, proceeding to slowly walk in with Jida by his side. Before he crossed, the Spark turned and took one last look upon his home, wondering if it would heal now, but only time would tell, however. That's what Void thought, before they both crossed back through, heading back to his apartment room. So, there's still some glitches left roaming around? Jida asked as she, Void, and Pofnu stood within the Spark's dingy little apartment room. A portal had now been opened to Aurora City behind the guitarist, while Void and Little Fox stood on the other side of the room. Not many, but they shouldn't be too much of a hassle to deal with. Once I finish them off, I'll stop by Nock's shop. I still owe you that tree in Yatir. Void recalled as he smiled at the musician. Oh, I haven't forgotten. Jida chuckled as she looked behind her shoulder and at the city of Aurora. Hey, you know, Nock has a spare bedroom in his workshop that I tend to stay in. If you want, I'm sure we can arrange some room for you. Jida suggested as she held her hands behind her back. Wait, like move in? Void asked, crossing his arms with a tilt in his head. Well, yeah. It's much nicer than all this. You'll have a bed, proper wash, and more space. Hell, you'll even have a workshop at your disposal. Jida added, leaving Void to scratch his chin in thought. I'm flattered, Freckles. Truly, I am. But I think I'm just going to stay here for the time being. Void replied, placing his hand upon his old couch. Oh, you sure? Jida asked with a puzzled face. Yeah, this little apartment has been my home for a good while. It'd be rude to just up and leave it behind after all this time. But I will think about it. Promise. Void replied, with a smile. Oh man. Well, to each their own, I suppose. Jida replied with an understanding nod. Turning, she put one leg through the portal, but left the other half sticking out. Looking back, she met the Spark's gaze before asking, You sure you don't need any help with the rest? Nodding with a tired smile, Void waved Jida off in a tender care. I won't. They're all practically breaking apart at the seams. It should be as easy as turning spaghetti. Nodding to this, Jida crossed to the other side and then waved her hand. I guess I'll see you later, she remarked as Void waved back. Yeah, it shouldn't take too long, maybe a day or so, the Spark assured as the portal began to close. I'll see you soon, Jida. Void finished as the portal sealed. Bye, Void, the musician answered as the passage between worlds sealed. Within both dimensions, the two multiversal beings smiled and turned to their respective views. Void to his little apartment, and Jida, who now stood upon the same roof where she and Void got to know one another. A sunrise had begun to cast itself in a beautiful glow over Aurora, making her feel at peace within her soul. Back in the apartment, Void looked from his left and then to his right, taking in the almost disgusting sight of his room. The broken table lay shattered, while dishes and clothes and other stuff lay ransacked upon the rest. Nuzzling up against his leg, Pofnu yipped and licked the Spark, who couldn't help but reach down and pick her up. The little fox quickly scuttled her way upon his shoulder, while he stood in deep thought, thinking about what he really wanted to do next. Looking up at the constellation map, Void decided on which reality he would visit first. It was almost instinctual. As Jida looked out over the sunrise, she prepared the polar cloak up and prepared herself to leave. That was, however, until a familiar sound came from behind. Turning her body, Jida's eyes lit up with surprise as she found Void, with Pofnu and a duffel bag over his shoulder. The portal behind him casting a bright blue glow upon his build before it faded from sight, leaving the Spark to be dawned in a gentle orange light. You know, on second thought, maybe a new place would suit us well, Void stated as he scratched Pofnu's head. Approaching with a smug grin, Jida held her hands behind her back and walked towards the Spark with swaying hips. Void, in response, walked his way over in return, smiling in a similar manner. I had a hunch that you were going to stay, but not that quickly, Jida said with a giggle. How could I say no to such an offer? Especially when I could have 2 roommates like you and Nock. Void replied, still smiling. With a giddy response, Jida lunged forward and embraced the spark in a tight hug. Void couldn't help but hug his friend back, all the while feeling gratitude in his heart. Welcome home, Void Novason. Jida gleefully stated before giggling again. Pulling back, the two looked into each other's eyes once more, both happy and grateful with where they were now. That was until Jida slapped her hand upon the spark's chest and yelling out, "Last one that knocks is a rotten egg!" Stumbling back, Void watched as Jida ran forward and warped to the next building ahead, all the while laughing in a genuine state of glee. Chuckling, Void looked out over the rising sun of Aurora City, now feeling the gravity of everything settling in. Where he was now, he realized it to be a new dawn for his life, a new adventure. As the sun continued to rise upon the spark's newfound home, a new beginning coursed through his soul, as he both turned and ran after Jida. As him and Pofnu chased the musician, the spark found himself to be laughing in a genuine state of happiness. "We'll see who's rotten after I beat you," Void cried as he and Jida were now toe-in-toe. "Nuh-uh, Novason!" Jida shouted back as the two laughed and raced. "Yaha, Woods!" Void retorted as their forms glistened within the sunrise. A new day was upon not just them, but everyone across the endless sea of worlds and stars. Deep down, Void knew that no matter what, he wouldn't give up on the Grand Omniverse. No matter what threat came in between him and those he cared for, the Spark would continue to protect the innocent and help anyone he could. But now, he wasn't alone, and never will be, for a new journey has only just begun.